So there seems to be a lot of confusion among collectors and historians about the equipment that was used in the studios of the various cylinder record companies for making master records. Now, most collectors are familiar with the home recorder that has a floating box that looks like a regular reproducer that fits in the standard carrier eye of the Edison phonograph. But that was not used for professional use, and it seems to be a surprise among learned and scholarly phonograph researchers. I guess they were among the idea that the recording heads used in the studio were about the same as the home recorders, and such is not the case. I'm going to show you from a book by Fabrizio and Paul from Discovering Antique Phonographs, 1877 to 1929. This is photo 3-46, one of the several recording machines remaining at Edison's factory, all of which were adopted from home entertainment models. Here, and a Triumph Model A has been fitted with a lead-sheathed flywheel, a magnifier with electric light, and a surprising carriage. At first glance, it appears that this Edison has been fitted with graphophone parts. The recording head mimics the floating arrangement of the graphophone, and the horn connection suggests the same influence. The proprietary design of Edison recording heads sold to the public seemed to be inadequate for Edison's own factory use. Photographed at the Edison National Historic Site in West Orange, New Jersey. So we see the magnifier in the master cylinder record, and then the surprising recording head and carriage. This is what made the blue amberols, the gold molded records, and the wax amberols. And also notice, if we look at the back here, let's see if I can get it in focus. You can see that chain drive in the back. That is for a 97 1/3 thread per inch feed screw that actually drove the recording head for the studio so that you could compensate for the shrinkage of the various mother master working mold. So that's the reason why. Now, barely anybody actually has a working studio recorder. Now, I have an Edison Triumph Topworks that I have modified to be similar to that Edison studio recorder. We have the flywheel over here, and we have a trunnion that bobs up and down and then is articulate to go onto the record. I am using I've tried a bunch of horns, and for my particular voice, I like to use about 1 foot of rubber tubing. You gotta imagine that in those studios, there was a partition between the recording machine and the artist end. So there was actually fairly long connections of rubber tubing, sometimes leading to 4 or 5 different horns of different lengths. They would have a solo horn, maybe 3 horns was a typical thing. You would have a vocal horn, a solo horn, and a band instrument pickup horn in the later days. And in fact, there's some pictures from Thomas Edison's attic radio program with Jerry Fabris that actually has some pictures of a mixer for horns that's made out of a trumpet valve. You open and close the different horns. You know, trumpet valves have 2 or 3 different openings, so they made it so that it was a manifold for the horns to go in, and you could then mix the different horns. And I'm sure you could put a bunch of those little adjustable manifolds to kind of mix the sound as an acoustical mixing board. You know, and technically you have 3, 4, 5 channels that go into your phonograph. So there are some similarities between multi-track recording and recording in the studio in the 1910 era. And this represents a recorder somewhere. This is actually an original recorder body, an original advanced ball bar and advanced ball. This recorder that you see right here, we're not sure what company it's from. It's very similar to the ones you saw in the Edison picture. It could be a different design of Edison's studio recorder. In fact, all the different recorders actually are set differently. Even the ones, this came from a set of about 40 recording heads of professional use that was part of a set from the 1910 era. And nobody really knows who it belonged to or anything. It could have been Walter Miller's personal collection of recorders. This is an Edison Triumph Topworks. We didn't even put a straight edge on there because we had to extend it past a regular straight edge to accept the longer throw of the carriage. And if you notice that the carriage on the trunnion, this is the trunnion back here, that it's actually in the middle, while regular trunnions actually stop over here. They stop at this line here, but we had to ream it out so it would go past there so that we could record the length of the cylinder. We're going to record, we've probably recorded this on another video. Well, actually, I think I'm going to record Uncle Josh and the Lightning Rod Agent, which would have been available on Edison and other records like Albany Indestructible Record Company, which had studios in New York City. But we'll talk about them at a later time. So we have the advanced ball. We have what's known as a trailing recorder, a lock bolt to lock the recorder in place. And I think I have the advanced ball set just about right. As I said, showed you that they would have had a magnifier or a microscope to look at the grooves to get a better accurate depth of cut. I've had to do it pretty much by ear and listening. So let's try to record a selection here. Uncle Josh and the Lightning Rod Agent. So you heard me I listen and adjust my sound. Uncle Josh Willers being the Lightning Rod Agent by Mr. Sean Borey. Record taken at the North American Phonograph Company. Well, I was sitting out on my back porch minding my own business when I happened to look out there, and there's a feller coming on my property, and he came up to me just as if he'd been the town marshal or the tax assessor, or like he knowed me all his life. Well, he said, "My dear sir, I'm astonished to look over your entire premises, and I find you haven't got a lightning rod in any building that you possess. Why, my dear sir, don't you know you are flying right in the face of Providence? Don't you know that lightning may strike at any time and demolish everything in the sound of my voice? Don't you know you are criminally negligent?" I said, "Hold on, gosh darn you. What do you got to sell anyway?" Well, he told me he had some lightning rods, and he'd like to show me what a powerful thing electricity was. So he brought out this box and told me to take a hold of handles, and I turned on those handles, and that made me just dance all over the porch, and it wouldn't let go. Felt as though I fell in a yellow jacket's nest and had about 1,000 of them stinging me at once. I told him I guess I could put up a lightning rod or two, seeing as how I didn't have any. Well, I went over to Henry Hoskins' house, and I got back. My place was a sight to behold. It looked like a harrow turned upside down. There were 7 lightning rods on the house, 9 on the granary, 6 on the old barn, and gosh darned if I got there, he had the darned old muley cow cornered up, trying to put a lightning rod on her. Well, I paid him for what he had done, and thank the Lord he hadn't done any more. Well, about a week after that, we had a thunderstorm, and I think that the lightning struck everything on the place except Spring Wagon and old muley cow, and they didn't have any lightning rod on them. Well, I thought I was getting pretty lucky till the next day when that feller came with that paper what I had signed, and darned if it wasn't a note for $650, and I had to pay it. Buncoed again by chowder. Well, that's typically how they made records in the early 1900s. And I want you to take a good look at the deep cut and all this what's known as swarf that came off of it. So that is how a studio recorder works. I might as well show you a close-up of the studio recording head, being that we have finished the record. And the record looks quite successful. It looks like a professional cut that you would find on a commercial record. So we'll show you this recorder here. So we have the stylus, which is 39 thousandths of an inch. That's on the end of the angled copper piece there. That is the stylus. Right there is the stylus. Over here, this round ball is the advance ball. We have an adjustable steel spring in the back to place the advance ball. If you notice, there's two alignment marks on the advance ball bar. And this is another adjustable slot on the end for the advance ball adjustment bar. The diaphragm here is made out of 7 thousandths of an inch glass. Held on the bottom is a gasket. And on top of the gasket is burnt rubber. The diaphragm is then on top of the burnt rubber, and more burnt rubber around the edge to seal it in better. The cutting stylus is adhered to the diaphragm with beeswax and stearic acid mixture. This is the tension for the advance ball to make it either, you can kind of see there's a slot there. That's to make it a little more difficult to turn so that it stays in adjustment when you set it. I am not sure exactly what company this is from. As I said, this could be from Edison. Maybe even from Columbia, I don't know. It could be from Albany Indestructible or U.S. Everlasting Company. We're not sure, but this is a really complete video on the use of a studio recording head. And if you find another one of these type of heads being used on the internet, please let me know. You will see plenty of home recorders which are not like this. Thank you for watching.